Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mind Over Matter, where we are talking to exemplary female founders and women leaders in business and in technology to get a deeper understanding of how this whole year has been for them and get a perspective of grit, because I thought that it's grit really that's helped us get through this year, the year that it's been. And I'm really happy to have Katherine Spinney with us today as our guest. And we again met on LinkedIn, like I think most people this year that I've met. And I've had the pleasure of working with Katherine Spinney on a couple of projects. So we've done some collaborative work, and I've really enjoyed seeing Katherine's journey. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Meenakshi, and good morning to you, and hello to all of the viewers out there. I'm so grateful, Meenakshi, to you for putting this together, and to all of your viewers for being a part of this. And it has been quite a year, as we all know, and this was my third year in business. I'm just wrapping it up, getting into my fourth year. So it came at an interesting time, because when I was entering 2020, a lot of things I was doing were on a 3-year cycle. So I had gotten certified as a coach, which was a 3-year certification. The website that I built was on a 3-year contract. So a lot of things kind of came together. And when I entered 2020, it was a turning point for me to say, if you're going to renew all of these things, you're in this, right? Like, you know, the experiment part's over. You're in this for the next 3 years. Are you committed to the next 3 years? And my answer was yes. And then just a couple months later, here comes COVID. So I wonder what might have been different if this were year 1 or year 2, but having already made that commitment to say, I'm all in, then it kept me going through what has been 2020. So my initial goal, once I made that commitment that I'm in this, and I went ahead and got myself recertified as a coach and did a lot of the logistical things with my website and everything else. So that I wanted to make sure those were all good to go. And a big goal that I had for myself this year was really doing things that were 100% on my own. I've had a lot of contracts over my first 3 years that I'm extremely grateful for, but many of them are through other agencies. So, for example, I do mostly leadership coaching and staff development in the nonprofit space. And for most of my contracts, I was training through other organizations. And I realized over the years, and then this was reinforced during COVID, those contracts are so precarious just by the nature of business. And certainly when COVID came around, and I learned there's only so much control we have, and we have to control as much as we can to make our businesses viable. So, you know, my first year in business, I had one contract that was half of the revenue for the entire year. And over time, that contract has reduced for various reasons. And going into 2021, I'm not going to have that contract at all. So had I kept that as a model that this was going to be half my revenue, I'd be in a lot of trouble. So I had to learn that it was great to continue these contracts, but I also had to do things completely on my own, that I was doing from A to Z, and the registration and the marketing and everything, so that I at least had that level of control over my own business. So that was something I went into 2020 as a goal, and then ultimately COVID really sped it along, because I did not start my business to be virtual. In fact, I was kicking and screaming against it. And once COVID happened, I had to transition from 100% not virtual to 100% virtual. And it really sped up that process, and it allowed me to do a lot of my work 100% on my own. I think my own stubbornness got in the way a little bit of I think in the beginning, it was a reluctant acceptance. It was, okay, I have to do this virtual thing. So this is what I need to do to survive. But there was a little bit of, but I don't want to, right? And I think in the beginning that I'm sure that energy shone through a little bit. And I really had to work on my own mindset. You talk about mind over matter. To say, yes, there's a lot of challenge behind this. I had to update. I got a new computer and a selfie light and a camera and a microphone, and I had to upgrade my internet and all these logistical things. But ultimately, I had ended up working with this amazing group throughout 2020 in Massachusetts. And being in Baltimore, I wouldn't have done that before, and that opportunity. And one of the trainings I did with a group in DC that mostly serves DC practitioners, I don't know how this happened. We couldn't get to the bottom of it, but one of the participants joined us from Azerbaijan. And I just thought, like, how cool is this, right? Like, look at this world, the literal world that is open to you if you will stop being stubborn and see the value despite the challenge, but to see the value where you have the opportunity to connect and serve literally across the world. And that took some mindset work, but I got there. Yeah.
Oh, I totally hear you. And, kudos to you for acknowledging that. And, that shows your strength that you've come through that. Thank you. Thank you for talking about that.
I think I did really well, if I do say so myself. And, it was funny because when COVID first hit, that second week in March or so, the first week almost, my memory is sitting on my couch just saying to myself over and over again, what do I do now? What do I do now? Right? So I had all these things already on the calendar that were either being outright canceled or I was being asked to do them virtually. Initially, I was doing everything on my phone because my internet was terrible, and I was trying to do slides and chats and Zooms like over my phone. It was a big mess. But that second week, I just said, okay, I have to figure this out. And I wanted to see what live streaming was all about. And in my brain, doing 1 minute of online was as daunting as doing a lot. And so I said, if I'm going to do this, let me do it. So for a couple weeks, I was streaming 3 times a day on 3 different platforms, just experimenting and learning and figuring out what worked for me, what worked for my clients and the people I was connecting with. And it was just such a growth journey that I appreciated. I was able to appreciate that in the moment even. And to say that this reluctance, maybe it could be considered a fear, probably can be considered a fear of video and, being out there in that way, it's all surmountable. It's all there for us to approach and address, and if we so choose to really get past it, but the choice does have to be there for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that it's such a gift that you're sharing your own experience with us, and I'm sure that people watching this have a lot to gain from that. So again, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I think I learned that I can do it. So many of those fears and hesitations, they're not unique to this year. I think, we're all creatures of habit and we all have our own patterns. And I think if I look back on my career and I look back on my personal life, you can see this pattern of, I don't know what this thing is, so I'm just not going to do it. And I think that's a lot of what the virtual space was for me, of I just don't know anything about it and it seems too big and too much, so no thank you. And what I had to remind myself personally, but then is so helpful when I'm working with my clients, is it's all doable. It's all doable, right? And sometimes you can plow through on your own, and sometimes the extra support helps. So getting toward the summer, I decided I wanted to start creating some virtual courses. And this was something, again, I had thought about pre-COVID, but never ended up doing it because it intimidated me and it felt like too much. And that one, I just didn't think I could do it on my own. I didn't know where to begin. It's too many platforms and too many, cameras and video editing. And so I found a course that was teaching me how to create a course. And it was so helpful. The instructor was wonderful. She walked me through, now you do this and now you do that. And it taught me so much about how to support other people too, because sometimes people just need the information and then they can do it on their own. Sometimes they need someone to walk with them around that journey. Sometimes they need the community around them to walk the journey with. So really understanding, working with clients of any capacity, and in my work with leaders, is what will serve them. Because sometimes it's information, it's so rarely information, right? So much it's mindset, like you said, and just understanding relationships and how to work with people. So it really, not only did it help me create my first virtual course, but it really expanded how I serve my own clients. I'm grateful for all of it, really. And even in the moments that were hard, I, like most people, had this really up and down year. But I had this stretch, kind of early fall, where it was the most down I've probably ever been in my life, and certainly in my career, where I was looking at my long to-do list of things that, and this has been a challenge for me going out on my own, that didn't necessarily have a deadline to them. They're just these ongoing, I should be working on this, I should be working on that. And I had maybe a 4 to 6 week stretch where I just wasn't working on those things. I didn't have the focus. I didn't have the motivation. I think just the prolonged amount of time with COVID, I had a birthday that came and went that was very unceremonious, and just missing family and friends, just sort of it all came down. And even through that, and it was hard at times, but even through it, it was so important to recognize I don't want to even say simple, because they're not simple for a lot of people, but the reminder of my business is still here. So many people, that was not the case for them, and they had so many extenuating circumstances. I felt not overwhelmed in the sense of like, I just can't get it all done. And I know a lot of people experience that, but people who are trying to work from home and they have kids doing virtual school and they're trying, I wasn't faced with that. And so it was this moment of, in fact, it's been my strongest year ever as a business, due to breaking into this virtual space and connecting with all kinds of organizations and people I wouldn't have otherwise, where I said, gosh, my business is going to survive this. My health, knock on wood, is going to survive this. And I'm, cooking and eating and paying my rent, and I'm connecting with all kinds of wonderful people on Zoom. And I don't think that was ever lost on me throughout, even in those moments that were a little self-pitying or a little woe is me. I was always very grateful. And I continue to be for the ability to navigate this in the way that I have. Keep on keeping on. And, I think as I learn every year in the business, one thing that has become so clear to me, and it's something I always knew, and it in a different way when you experience it, is the importance of relationships along the way, and the importance of being patient, which is not my natural state, those have been instrumental to the success that I've had, and they're going to continue to be instrumental. There was a time, maybe my first year, 18 months, when things were very slow. I didn't have a lot of paid contracts coming in. I was doing things for free or very low cost to start to build up. And I was very impatient with certain people and organizations, and I know with certain ones pushier than I should have been, of like, but we've already met. Can you sign the contract or not? Because I get a rent to pay and I get other people. And what I've learned this year, some of the contracts that came through were with people I met 3 years ago. And in one case, when I launched my second virtual course, I had a woman register and the name sounded familiar. I couldn't place it. Turns out I met her through a friend at a party 6 years ago. I gave her a card that now is a place I no longer work there, but she ended up following me online, and the course was exactly what she needed. And moments like that where it's like, oh yeah, people are ready on their own time, and you can't push it and you can't rush it because you're going to push people away. And another case that came to mind, I had a woman that we tried a couple of iterations to work together. It just never worked out. I did have moments of sort of like, okay, do we go on another call? Do we try this? We've had multiple. And she ended up referring me to someone else who was looking for my services, and I got a really great contract out of it. So just remembering that it is a slow process, that people need their time to, what's the business mantra? They need to know you, like you, and trust you. And that takes a long time. So to continue to nurture those relationships, to continue to be patient with people and let them work on their time, not my time, and continue to take the learning from this year. I'm about to build out my third virtual course for next year. Yes, and to continue to really do as much as I possibly can under my own name. And finally, continuing to say no and increasing the times I say no. That was something I never did in the beginning. It was like any business I could get, any conversation, any coffee, anything I would say yes to. And over time, it's felt good to be thoughtful and strategic to say, this isn't a partnership that serves me or my clients. And just really honoring the mission and the vision that I have for this work. So the one thing I'm going to start is I really need a little bit more structure to my days and to my year. So the first few years of my business, it was very reactive in a lot of ways, and it was just exploratory in a lot of ways. And I don't want to completely lose that, but there maybe 2 years in, there was this moment of just like, this is so scattered. Like, what am I even doing? Like I was just, again, saying yes to everything and just jumping on things that that came my way. And it served its purpose, and I always want to be open to new things. But even a lot of times now, when I wake up outside of whatever meetings and obligations I have, when it comes to my working time, working on courses or projects or workshops, it's just a little like where the spirit takes me that day. And sometimes that works, but sometimes it doesn't. So I really want to be more intentional to say, okay, you want to have this course laid out by such a date, and then here's how you have to break it down, and here's how you have to work on those things that only have internal deadlines. That's been one of my biggest struggles, that if I am obligated to someone else, or I have a coaching appointment, or I have to turn something in, like absolutely I'm going to do it. But when it's just this lingering whenever you want to get it done, that's been challenging. So that's something I certainly want to work on. And the other thing I want to really consider this year is I have been doing this on my own. The only person that I pay to help me is my accountant, and increasingly the time-consuming admin sort of work it just takes so much time, as you know. And so I've started to think about, is it time to hire some support there? Is it time to hire some folks who I can train on my trainings? And, I trademarked my leadership training, and is that a step I want to take going forward? How does this business survive without me? And right now it can't, and I would like it to. So how do I do that? And that requires me continuing to build relationships, continuing to strengthen the work that I'm doing. It's always a work in progress. It's not 100% there yet. I don't know if it's ever 100% there, but I'm getting closer. And I really need to stop the reactive part. I think finding that line between being open to things that come my way, but not always feeling this, this impatient need to respond immediately or to say yes, to be very thoughtful. See grit as perseverance with purpose and with vision, because a lot of times when we're working, we're working really hard and we're putting a lot of hours in, and it's not very impactful, and it's not very productive, and it's not serving our clients very well. And I think that's part of the process, right? We have to learn where our time is most valuable. And so the grit, and another side of that is, it's really hard to know when to let go of things, because you have the category of cliches that is like never give up and always keep pushing. But there are certain ideas that aren't going to work no matter how much you push. And so I don't like that gray space, but it's just, there's no way around it. You can't ever know definitively, well, it hasn't worked until now. Does that mean it's never going to work? Or does it mean it needs an adjustment, or it just needs a little more time? That to me is really hard to discern. But I've had moments where I've said to myself, I know this is going to work. I just need to keep pushing. So to me, that's the most authentic moment of grit, which is I have to keep pushing because I know that this is going to work out for me. And an example I give all the time, when I first moved to Baltimore and my business was just starting, I had no clients, I didn't know anybody. It was really big transition time. And there was an organization in the city that was sort of the gatekeeper to the client base I wanted to work with. And I said, I need to get in. And I know when I get in with them, it's going to open up all these doors, but I couldn't get in. And it took me about a year of phone calls and emails and meeting anyone saying, do you know anyone who works here? Do you know? And other times I've given up very easily, right? I've reached out once or twice and said, I don't want to be a pest. I'm just gonna, but it was so clear to me that this was the path. And eventually I got in, I got my contact, we were working towards my first contract. The woman ended up leaving the organization. There was no other contact for me. I had to start at square one. And I just was like, it was frustrating, but I just knew what the end result was going to be. So eventually it was 18 months, close to 2 years. I got my first contract, and now I'm on contract 9 or 10 with them, which I knew was going to happen. And I just couldn't let it go. I said, I just know once I get in there, this is going to be the result. So we don't always have that clarity, but I think when it's there, that to me is the epitome of I'm going to do whatever it takes because I know this matches up with my vision so perfectly that I'm going to keep at it no matter what. I think one of the ongoing challenges for me that I always encourage people to wrestle with, and I think it is a wrestle. I used to say to a former boss when he asked me to do certain things, and I would say, well, I'm not really comfortable doing that. And he would always ask me, are you not comfortable because you're not familiar? Or are you not comfortable because it's going against a core value of yours? And more often than not, it was the first one that I just, like I said, I didn't know how to do something. If it was overwhelming to me, I just didn't want to do it. So listening to that voice and that hesitation is important, and it's really important to discern it. Because you certainly don't want to do anything that goes against your values, but you also don't want to shy away from things just because they're uncomfortable and you're not used to them. So taking a moment, instead of doing what I tend to do, though I'm getting better, which is this is uncomfortable, I'm just not going to do it, to take a moment and say, why is it uncomfortable? Is it just that it's new, or is there something unethical or immoral or something that I am never going to agree to do? So once you figure that out, then I think the decision to move forward becomes easier. And one thing for me that I found over time, as I said in the beginning, really anything is surmountable. You just have to be willing to go through the parts that are messy and full of mistakes. So at the beginning of COVID, when I did my first Facebook Live, was the first platform I used, I didn't do enough research on how it all worked. So I was able to do a Facebook Live, but I didn't realize there were people on there that I couldn't see. And there just were so many mistakes to it. And it took me a few times. And then when I tried on Twitter, and then I tried on Instagram, and each one operates its own way. Oh boy. And I even say now on Zoom, 9 months later, I've made every mistake you can make on Zoom until I make my next one. And then something else happens. So the ability to say, I can figure this out, and I'm willing to make the mistakes in order to figure it out. I'm willing to feel embarrassed and uncomfortable and not like that feeling, to understand that it's the only way to get to the mastery of it. And so when people say to me sometimes, starting my own business, or when I started doing all this virtual stuff, you're so brave. And I said, I joke, I say, well, maybe it's brave and maybe it's foolish, or maybe it's a little bit of both. But when they say courage isn't not having fear, it's having the fear and facing it, that's important for people to hear. I think that people who are going out on their own or trying new things, everybody has fears. Everybody has reservations. Everybody gets the butterflies. And it's just, if you're willing to push through that to get to where you want to be.
Great. Thank you so much, Katherine. This is just absolutely enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, and wish you continued success in 2021 and beyond. And have a wonderful and safe holiday season.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. Everything back to you, and then some, and to all your viewers. Believe in yourselves. Believe in yourselves. The more people you talk to, the more similarity I think you'll hear over stories. Is we're no more exceptional than anybody else. We just made the decision and stuck with it, and you certainly can too. So happy holidays, Meenakshi, to you and to everybody else.
Thank you very much, Katherine. Take care.